So welcome everyone. We're here to talk today about energy and leadership. This is our first season of 2020. We've decided, Nancy and I, to do these We Can Do Better conversations as seasons going forward. So hopefully you all enjoy that. And the topic today is prioritizing self-care, which I expect many of you will find interesting and have stories about. So we encourage you to contribute and share your stories in the comments in the post we share after concluding the video. And so today we're going to chat, Nancy, my co-host Nancy John and I are going to chat with Nina Stultz and Stephanie Tran on this topic of prioritizing self-care, why it's important, what's the impact of prioritizing self-care, and what are their stories and experiences so that we can help create diversity and inclusion and richness in this experience and conversation that adds value to you and invites your perspective in so that this can be a learning experience for all of us. And so I guess with that, Nina, let me invite you to share what's important about prioritizing self-care and what is the impact that you see based on your experience and your story?
Well, I think self-care for me is one of those terms that actually kind of makes me cringe. Like, as much as I love people and love connecting with people and love always putting people first, I think when I think of self-care, we're all better at giving than receiving, and it's just a hard thing to do, is to receive. And so the impact of it when you actually move past maybe that fear that if you take care of yourself, other things around you won't hold up or won't work right. Um, that's what that really means to me in its like simplest form, is that you can do both. And actually everyone knows that when you take care of yourself, it's always the oxygen mask analogy, you put on yourself first and then you can help other people. But how many times do we actually do that? I don't think very often. I think we're running around with an oxygen mask trying to help and serve and create and support and build community. But when we're in a place of self-care and really doing those things, whatever it is, and it doesn't have to be, I'm a very scheduled person. So I always think like, I don't have a crazy self-care routine. I'm not like, oh, I get up at 5 a.m. and then for a half hour I journal and then I work out for the next half hour. And then I quietly, sip my coffee while journaling, hoping that my kids don't wake up. It's more so just those little things throughout the day. Even this, just getting together with friends and pausing and enjoying each other's company. And to me, that's a great way to do self-care. It's just those things that fill you up. I think self-care, we think of, we have to do something else. We have to work out. We have to schedule ourselves.
Great point.
Really, if we just pause and step into those moments of life that are naturally there, that's what self-care is. It's simply just saying, in this moment, I'm going to be present. In this moment, I'm either going to connect or listen to that person deeply because I want them to feel validated, or I might, in that moment, share something that I have to say because that fills me up and I have a story and I have joy and I have all those things that I, from my heart, want to share with that person.
Great, Nina. Love that. Love that. And you get to an important context for this. How do we define self-care, right? I mean, you talked about sort of a vision of what it might look like or a structure of how your morning would look like in terms of self-care. So Stephanie, what are your thoughts in terms of self-care and your experience with that, the importance of prioritizing self-care and its impact?
So I share the same sentiment as Nina. When you said cringe, I was cringing. I was like, yes, it's the new word. Everyone's celebrating self-care. But I think it's, especially with the young people, I think it's getting so confusing as to what it actually looks like for each person. And I think that nowadays, I've actually had a conversation with someone on the phone that said, oh, I don't really have money to, go get my nails done. And I was like, well, there's other forms of self-care, and self-care looks different, I think, for every single person. And I think one of the most important things I've incorporated this past year is definitely having time outside. So time outside that's not scheduled like walking my dog, but more so just time outside where I'm getting out of the house, because being an entrepreneur, like working your own business, working from home, it keeps you kind of in this confined space for a really long time. And so being outside has become a part of that self-care routine that I have.
Love that. Love that. And
Sounds almost like self-care is in a way, Stephanie, for you, just breaking up your normal day
Yes.
and like 2 or 3 things that you're like, you know, this isn't my normal work day, but I just need to get these other things done in a way, you know, whatever that might look like. I think one thing I love to do as well, like, is I pick one thing every day. So it sounds really silly, but I pick like a personal, professional, and purposeful thing to do every day. So like personally, what do I want to do for myself today? Whether that's taking 10 extra minutes in the shower or, you know, like it sounds silly, but again, it's simple things that you're just saying, I'm going to pour into myself. I'm going to pour into other people professionally and in my job. And then purposely, like, how am I looking outside of myself? How am I doing greater things? Because I think when we actually care for other people, like we get cared for ourselves, because when we're all looking around to find ways to serve each other, it just naturally adds a different element of care. And I think it's called self-care, right? Because it's caring for yourself by caring for other people. And not in the sense that you're always going or always doing things or getting burnt out. But I like what you said too, Stephanie, just about the fact that like you're getting outside. So you're actually breaking your routine of what you think you have to do or what you feel you have to do. And just getting a breath of fresh air. Like that's what it is.
I mean, I like just what you said around the definition of that and the fact that you're right. Like when something becomes like a really popular term, it then carries with it this like universal message of, you know, getting my nails done or like having a spa day. Like, and that's not really what it is. And so I really appreciate you bringing that up, because that makes me think if someone was to ask, well, what is self-care? It's almost asking them the question, what would fill you up? What do you need to fill you up right now? What do you want? What do you need? Like asking those kinds of questions. And yeah, if it's getting your nails done, awesome. Like that's great, but that's not necessarily what filling up your cup looks like. So yeah, I think it is important for people to be able to define self-care for themselves, rather than looking necessarily at, I really like the schedule that Nina has, but that might look really good. And maybe what I'm drawn to is the results that Nina's getting from it, rather than necessarily all the steps that she took or how she got there. May not speak to me, because as soon as I start doing it, I'm like, what am I doing? This is not actually, it's actually creating more stress for me than it's creating here in my life. So yeah, there's a lot of reflection that's required there, right? Just to say, what do you need right now? And kind of do that. Go do that piece, fill yourself up.
Thanks for that, Nancy. I appreciate that. And what you're connecting for me is the notion of self-care is about needs, right? And it's about choices. So Stephanie's talking about going outside and being outdoors for a while as self-care. What's the cost of that? Time, choice. Often $0, right? And so it doesn't have to be doing your nails or having this, going to this expensive program. It could be that, but it doesn't have to be. It's all about what do you need. And maybe doing your nails does fill somewhat, who knows what fills people up, but that's the personalization of it. And I think that's part of the excitement I have around this topic, is to demystify self-care and make it simpler than we may think it is, and to make it more personal. It's like, hey, if you need to go outside, if getting outside every day for a while, or for running 10 miles or whatever you might do, Stephanie. I know she's a runner, and that's part of her story. Whatever that might be, or breaking it down like you did, Nina, personal, professional, having sort of a high level grouping of these aspects of my life I want to give some energy and attention to. Isn't that self-care? I want to care for myself. It could be exercise. It could be going out for a walk. For me, it's a meditation and gratitude practice. That fills me up, to answer your point. What fills you up? Well, what energizes me and gets me ready for the day and to serve myself and others, to get grounded through meditation and to remind myself and build this muscle of gratitude, so that I can come to my day and to my interactions with others the best I can. That's not always great. Hopefully it's better than not in most occasions, but those are the self-care practices. And that's what I get to. They're practices, they're choices, right? And they're different for everybody. And so if we expand the definition of self-care, what does that open up for people in terms of what they might choose to do as they begin the year to better serve themselves so they can serve others?
So something that's really funny is I just finished up, I don't know, I called it like my 180. So for the past like 3 months, I decided back in September that I was going to every day um, pick one person every day that I can help or support or pour into. And then actually I chose one person every day that would do that for me. So like I was actually giving as much as I was taking. And I guess when I think back on it, it was kind of a form of self-care because I have a huge desire to like love on other people and engage and build community. But I have to be conscious then that I'm also being poured into, like what's filling me up. And what does fill me up is conversations like this and engaging with people and, you know, getting around people who think different than me or people who are going to actually challenge my thinking, not just encourage me in it. And so it was probably one of the coolest things I've done as far as like being intentional about giving back to myself
Right.
at the same time that I was pouring out. And so it was neat every day. And it was really crazy too, because as I did this, I didn't have a plan. You know, I didn't have like, well, I always call it like my hit list is always my joke of like people that I want to connect with or get to know more. um,
Great.
it very organically, like people came to me or people recommended someone for me to connect with. And as I was open to that and caring for myself, it's like that person that day was just who I needed. Or I just thought about it the night before, like, oh, I wish I could find someone who knew this. And then they were, you know, not an expert in it, but they had done it in some capacity that I could learn from. So I think I say all that because I intentionally for 90 days, we naturally find people to pour into, but I actually intentionally for 90 days found someone to pour into me or someone that I could learn from. And through that, I got a little nervous at first because I would approach people and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. Like, would you be willing to have a conversation or grab coffee or whatever it is? Like, I need this right now. And at first it felt really awkward, but about after like 2 weeks of it, we all want to give, right? Like I want to give. So why wouldn't someone else want to give to me? And if that's what I need, like I need to speak up and say that I need someone to do that for me. So
Thank you for that, Nina. Thank you. So Stephanie, what are your thoughts? What's coming up for you as you think about this topic and your experience and your story?
Yeah, I think there's a lot, and I think something that Nina pointed out, I think the word intentional is a huge part of self-care. And it's so interesting because I think of self-care as like in itself, like the word seems very selfless, but I think it actually is selfish, like in a good way. And I think what Nina pointed out about being able to, you know, take as much as she's giving, I think struck me because I think that that's what self-care, it's self, right? It's about you. And so hearing that, I was like, oh, that's an interesting kind of take on what self-care is. I also think there's an element of self-care that I think from my experiences at least that needs to be in some way challenging. I think that self-care, at least for me as defining it, there's some level of like growth that comes from it. But again, personal definition, I think it depends on what people's context in their lives are. But I think being where I am right now, working with a lot of 20 to 30-year-olds, we're all in this space where it's a confusing time. We're still going through massive career changes or getting out of school. And I think post-grad especially is such a difficult time. And that's where I think self-care should really, really come in. And I think when I think about the trajectory of every single person's life, I think the sooner we're able to create these practices for ourselves, the better we can be, not just for ourselves, but the people that we're taking care of, which I think at the end of the day is what people really want to do. I think people want thriving relationships. I think people want to feel seen and to feel heard after filling yourself up, have the energy to connect with others and then, you know, build that like prosperous relationship. I think that's what every human being like wants at the end of the day. And it's kind of an interesting thought to think that self-care is a part of that. that conversation. And I think in terms of it being very challenging, or it being a challenging part for me personally, Nina, I did something similar to you, but I did it in the last month. So me and my partner call it clean house. It's like a practice that we do. Pretty much it's like 30 days of like whatever we feel like is the current need that we have in our life. So it's not that, let's just say this month you really want to like start getting up earlier, whatever it is that floats your boat. It doesn't mean that that's going to be a forever thing. It's just what the current need is right now. And we do it in month cycles because part of the challenge is really getting into that, making it a streak, like making it a thing every single day and making it a practice. So it's like us both keeping each other accountable for that and getting as long a streak as possible with 2 people involved versus just like the one person by yourself. So it becomes more of like a teamwork, collaborative sort of effort. And that's part of our culture at our company too.
That's really cool. You know what, what really resonated for me, what you shared, Steph, is around the challenging oneself. For me as well, that speaks to me. And it may not speak to everybody else. It's being able to balance, like understanding that self-care doesn't always, it may not always feel good, right? Like, so yes, like there's parts of self-care which is around taking a pause, which is around recharging yourself, which is around what do you need to fill up, like in that way. There's also another aspect of it that when you were speaking, kind of that touched me, was around the growth aspect. And growth is not comfortable. Growth does not always feel good. Like, especially those early stages, right? You're like, well, what's happening? Like, it's just not feeling good, right? And to not shrug that off because you're like, that doesn't feel good, so that's not part of my self-care, and I'm moving on. And that's like, then we create these 2 separate worlds that they reside in, and they don't reside in 2 different worlds. Like, there is this aspect, part of caring for yourself is looking for, where do I need to challenge myself? Where do I need to challenge the way I'm thinking? Because in the long run, where it takes me is to like this next level. So I totally resonate. That really resonated with me, the challenge aspect, that it's not always a feel good thing. And maybe it's just kind of it's just marrying it as part of the rest of your life, right? Like, you're not always going to feel good. So self-care is like the ability to reflect and understand those things and know what you need to do in those moments to kind of propel yourself forward. And that some of that requires pause and some of that requires get up and move. So that, yeah, for me, that word really, that makes sense to me. So thanks for bringing that up.
I love that, Nancy, in terms of self-care being a micro for life, right? So it's about growth, as Stephanie was talking about, and growth's not easy. It's growth's outside the comfort zone, so it's going to be a little difficult. And I love the practice that you have for 30 days. A couple aspects: doing the 30 days to build a practice and trying new things every 30 days together. So there's partnership, community, accountability, motivation, inspiration, and encouragement built into that. There's so many good things about that. But the notion of building your trying muscle as part of self-growth, and it doesn't have to be the comfort, the filling your cup, as Nancy's talking about. It can be, but what if it's like, I want to learn more about neuroscience and kind of doing that, or I want to go for walks every day for the next 30 days, and make sure it's the consistency part of it too. It's building habits. And so self-care routines are often about habits, and they could be like the structure I think Nina was pointing us to in the beginning, of having our coffee and doing this and doing that. And we may get there, but how do we get there unless we're trying different things and say, now if I get up at 6 o'clock, that would be awesome. Oh, but I struggle because I'm not a morning person. I need to get up at 7 o'clock. Or no, I can get up at 5 o'clock and get so much more done. We trial and error it so that we can get to one that we'll do consistently. And hopefully we do that with somebody. And so we can hold each other accountable and encourage one another while we're doing it too. So there's so many elements of that I love and appreciate it.
And I think the piece that really stood out for me, that I really appreciate what you shared, Nina, is around the asking. There's this thing about giving, but like being very conscious about asking is that really struck me. And I'm like, you know what, I could probably do a better job of that, to be like very intentionally ask, and kind of consciously almost set it as a scheduled thing to do, is the asking aspect. Because especially like when, like all of us here, entrepreneurs, I mean, I know Steph, you said you have a partner in your business, but for the most part, it's a smaller group of people, and it can be really easy to just get into the doing of things and just like, I'll just work this out, I'll figure it out, I get it done. And being able to kind of ask to be filled, I think that's a really valuable thing to do, because then that actually puts us in a position to be able to give as well. Because then you know what I mean, like you just kind of like, it's just this channel, you know.
Yeah.
Because if you are a channel for something, you take in and you have the ability to give out. And sometimes what happens is, you know, it can happen opposite ways. Sometimes we're just always giving and we're depleted, or sometimes we're always taking and then you're just stuffed. Like that gets stale, right? Like you're not channeling anything, right?
Think about the act of asking someone to do what
Right.
Nina was ask someone else to pour her cup. That's an act of caring.
Yes.
I trust you
Yes.
enough to make that request.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe talk a little bit more about that, Nina.
Yeah.
If you don't mind.
Oh goodness. Well, I mean, I think too, this sounds, I'm just going to say this sounds really funny right now, but like, so I started my business like 6 months ago, and it really came out of a place of like failure and brokenness, and because I am a giver naturally, and I kept giving and giving, and then like just it never stuck. It wasn't appreciated. It wasn't, you know, so I was obviously depleted. I was in a spot of depletion. And I've never been one to take just personally, but right now in my life, like this is the thing I'm going to say, which sounds a little nuts, but like I'm being selfish and I love it. Like, because I know if any of you would ask me for something, I would gladly do it for you. And so I think that idea of me getting outside my head, moving out of my own way, and doing the same thing that I would gladly and excitedly need someone else to do for me is a really incredible place to be. And when I think about self-care, there's that quote that says something like, self-care is not selfish. And I'm like, well, it is, and it's actually okay to be selfish. And sometimes it's okay to be selfish when you have a need. And it is stuff, I like what you said too about like, it's for a time, right? Like you don't have to do it forever. If for 3 days you need to go have coffee with a friend, like go do that. Like just for a few days, you know, you're having a tough time, you just need that extra fill up. That's kind of your self-care. Go do that. You know, if you for 3 months want to work out, go find a buddy. You know what I mean? It's those little things, but each part of self-care doesn't have to be the same. And I think with that as well, I don't know, this kind of just pops into my head, but my daughter, she's in 2nd grade and she's just like me. Like bad. She loves people. She just has a good heart. She's a little mama. She's always thinking of others. And we've been trying to teach her lately that it's okay not only to say no to people. I think you hear that a lot, like, oh, you can have boundaries, say no. But it's actually more so than that, to say like, I don't have to give to that person right now, or I don't have to do this. Like it's about me in this moment. What do I need? Like the silliest example is I have 2 girls and they're sisters and they share and they love each other all the time. And when they don't, her default, because of the kind of person she is, she's a giver, her default is to then be like, okay, I'm sorry, I love you, sis, like, you can have the toy, it's not about me. But I'm trying to teach her, like, there's times that it's okay for you to say, like, actually I want this, or I need this, or this would be really helpful to me if I could have it for 5 minutes and then you could do it, right? I mean, it's like a silly little example, but when you apply that to our own lives, it's okay to say, like, I need help, I'm not okay, or this is what I need from you. And I think one thing that resonates with me right now that we're all talking about is like, we can't do it alone. We need community. And I love building community for other people. It's one of my favorite things, is just to get people together and be like, go be friends. People might think I'm an expert in getting people together, networking or connecting, but then I'm left alone because I'm not actually connecting into what I'm building. So.
And that's such an important thing that you bring up there, is this element of, you know, we includes me and us, right? So you build a community, your outward energy for it, but that includes you. But maybe sometimes that doesn't feel like that because of whatever reason. Especially if you're a natural giver. And so the notion of I matter and honoring your needs in a situation is important. And it's something, in terms of a skill to develop, and noticing, it's like, notice how you're feeling, right? Hey, and instead of, you give your example of your girls, but I think we do that as adults too, right? Oh, I'm just going to defer. The other person's more important than I am, is what the behavior says, right? Is I'm deferring because I want to be nice. And I've talked about being kind versus being nice. And we all want to be kind and nice, right? Generally. But when does that become something that devalues self and does not honor self? And when does that become something that a pattern that we might want to break? And so that's also an element of self-care, is noticing those patterns and saying, wait a minute, in this instance, I can be okay with honoring my needs and saying no. And I'll be honest, this year, actually, I just did it again, 2020. Last year, one of the things I was intentional about was saying no to things. And it's not because they weren't things I valued or wanted to engage in. It's how to make a choice of what most connected to directionally where I was going, what my heart was most into. And for now, my choice, back to choice for now, is I'm going to choose these things. That means those things have to either be a no or a defer. And I have to be okay with that. And then others would need to be okay with that. But me standing in the fact that, hey, no is okay. I can say no to stuff, right? I'm always, I think one of the things I needed to work on was saying yes to too many things, which didn't serve me and ultimately didn't serve other people. So I had to say no, so I could create the boundaries you were mentioning, Nina, to be my best for myself and others. And I think that's self-care, right? So that is a behavioral aspect to self-care in terms of a choice. And so again, broadening self-care, but let's look at selfish as different. Our mindset around selfish as a society tends to be negative. What if, it can be selfish, but I use the term honoring self, right? Maybe that's more palatable, at least something that's easier to get into that conversation about doing something for yourself with, than if it feels selfish, because our reaction to selfish is, wait a minute, do I really want to do that? But if we honor ourselves and our choices, which may be to give to others in a situation, or it may be to say no, or it may be to say, you know what, I need right now to go for a walk. It's my time. I haven't had time. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I haven't had any time for myself. I need to do this for myself. And what if more of us made those choices that were quote unquote selfish? What would that mean for our relationships, our ability to give to others, and our results?
I have this question that's popped up in my mind, something I've been pondering a little bit, and I find with what both you, Nina, and Brian, you've said, it's kind of heightening that for me. That's why I was smiling so much. I was like, oh my God, like I feel like you guys are talking right into me. So I'm curious, like, how would we be different or operate I should, rather than looking at it that way, looking at it instead as I want or I need?
So I love what you brought up there too. And this is another element of self-care, is language. Because this element of should is something I talk about a lot. And the element of the language of should brings judgment, intentionally or unintentionally. Oh, I should be doing this. I should honor their needs versus I should be going for a run now. I should be doing whatever that is, instead of what if I need whatever language that works for you. And so, what are your thoughts, Stephanie, in terms of how language might affect your self-care and the choices you might make, maybe to honor self, which might be considered selfish, but actually is honoring yourself?
I think language is everything. I think you're thinking so many thoughts a day, like that's what drives everything. And so I think that the way you speak to yourself and the way you speak to others is really, really critical to the direction you're taking your life. Something that Nina was mentioning was she was saying like it's okay to be selfish, and I think I used to think that way, and then I started thinking no, it's not just okay, like it's actually critical, it's actually important to do that. It's not a bad thing, but then selfish has that connotation. So in terms of like language, the thing that popped up in my mind when Nancy mentioned it is um I think this is kind of like a different line of thought, but oftentimes, especially in like the health and fitness industry, a lot of people say, "Oh, I should be like exercising," and I think part of like the work that we do is really helping people embrace this like new lifestyle. Because if you keep thinking, "I should, I should, I should, I should," then there's no real long-term change, right? Versus seeing it as, and it's like a perspective shift, seeing it as an opportunity, seeing it as, wow, I get to actually do that. I get to take care of myself. I get to spend time for me. And I think that's the shift that I have been actively practicing on my own for my own self-care, because naturally I think this is a theme that I'm seeing, all of us are pretty much like more like givers. And I think that just comes from, for me at least, from my parents, like they're givers, but I've seen where it has become too far on one end. And like you were mentioning, I think both Nina and Nancy, where you're depleted and you're just unable to give, that actually giving becomes a nasty thing for you, like where it's like, oh well, like they don't appreciate it and all these things. But that language comes from the fact it should be an indication, or it should be a sign that it's actually you not being fulfilled versus the other person being not appreciative, because that comes from you actually not taking care of yourself.
Right.
This is like an interesting like thought.
Right. Well, I actually am just
Fascinating.
curious, like, you brought up your girls, right? And so that really spoke to me as well. And I'm curious for you, like, why, like when you think about your girls, like why is it so important for you to instill, especially in the eldest one, right? Like, um, especially like kind of instilling in her a different way of thinking early.
Well, I think it's because what you were just saying too, stuff resonated with me in the sense that it just makes me think of truth versus lie. It's like such an important thing. We're talking about verbiage, we're talking about language, but really that's what it comes down to in its truest form. So last night I put my kids to bed and I told my husband, see you later. I'm going to get sushi by myself. Poured myself a glass of wine, brought my journal, and this is Nina's self-care. Over the holidays. And what's so funny? Over the holidays, I was with family. We had a great time. It was lovely. But I missed this. I missed people. I missed community. And part of my self-care is engaging, because that's what fills me up. And so literally, I have not been doing self-care that sounds like backwards, but I've not been doing self-care for the past 2 weeks, because I'm not with people. I'm not helping people. I'm not doing all these things. I'm just kind of like settling in what I should be doing during Christmas.
Right.
Anyway, so I went and got sushi last night, and one of my practices that I do and that I teach my kids as well, it just made me think of this as well. Like if they say a lie about themselves, we make them say 3 truths out loud. And something that I've been doing daily, and not to say like you have to do this every day, but for me, I need to do this every day because my self-talk gets out of control sometimes.
Right.
Is I'll write down the lie and I'll write down the truth, and then I'll speak the truth, and then I'll decide on an action that day that will help me, whether that's I'm just trying to think of an example of that. Like, oh, I didn't get a workout in today or something like that, So like, oh shoot, I broke my chain. I've been doing this for 2 whole weeks, and now shoot, today ruins it all. Life is terrible. But that's not true. The truth is, shoot, I've been doing that for 2 weeks. Good for me. He asked my husband, hey, can you get home from work early so that I can actually go and do this, right? Again, it's bringing people into it. It's setting yourself up for success. It's not getting down on yourself. It's not sitting in the lie of that. It's just saying, okay, well, the truth of the matter is we all make mistakes and we all run out of time and we all can't do everything every day. But what's next, right? Like that's always my question for myself with self-care is like, I'm feeling depleted, if I'm feeling that I don't know what to do next. It's just a matter of asking people again. Like that's really what it comes back to for me that I've been learning is it's asking people for help and just saying, I want to do this. I want to be successful in this for myself. Can you help me do this?
So 2 points.
No one said no yet.
2 points there that resonate, and it's asking for help. And then there's this element of, all right, I've been working out for 14 days straight and the 15th day I miss, and how we have a judgment about that. Oh, I've broken the chain, you said. And so where's the opportunity then to say, maybe that was my monthly self-care day. I'm going to continue tomorrow. And so the mindset around, oh, my goal was I'm going to work consecutive days. And so the notion that came up for me over the holidays and through various different conversations and things that I connected with was, what about goal versus intention? And so goal specific, all right, I'm going to work out every day. If I haven't worked out at all for the last year, am I going to make that goal, do you think? Or am I directionally moving towards, I want to prioritize self-care, and by April, I want to be doing 5Ks. So that means maybe I'm going to do different exercises 4 times a week. This week, it might be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. Next week, it might be different days. But you set intention and you set sort of micro goals, but you're flexible in them, in that a interruption doesn't kill the momentum you've already built. So does the 14 days you just did, does that get erased because you missed a day? That's mindset. That's choice. What if something comes up and you're just not, that something unexpected comes up, disrupts your day, you don't have the time for it? Is that, oh my God, I'm terrible, I missed the 15th day? Or it's, hey, I'm picking it back up tomorrow, let's go. There's an element of choice there, right? And I think our conditioning is, what are the expectations we're setting? Are they realistic from where we are to where we want to go? And how about our mindset about that change how we engage with the practice of self-care? And I think mindset plays a big part of it too.
I think it's really important to know ourselves, right? And that's where probably the trial and error part of this comes in, is you try a few things, because like, for example, I'll see someone do something and I'm like, that's amazing. One, based on what I see happen for them and how they executed on it. And I'll be like, you know what? The way they model that out, I really like it. I'm going to try it. And then I may go through it and be like, this just doesn't speak to me, but I'm still pursuing the end that I wanted from it. So there is that allowance. Like, we need to give ourselves the allowance to like try it and see whether it works or not. And so just like we do with so many other things in life, like even with self-care, like it might just be a bit of a trial and error. Because I mean, I know so much more at this point than last year at this point about what works and doesn't work for me. And I know it because I just tried it and was willing to kind of be like, okay, let me just give it a shot, see how that works. Like, so last year I had set I had some goals around, like I had set like this goal for like a run time for me for running a 10K. And I knew there was no way I was getting there like in a month's time. That wasn't happening. So it was a progressive thing for me that I built out over the months. And what I realized through doing that is I'm somebody who does need, like, to be able to do that, I had to set some external factors for myself. It wasn't just going to be every morning I'm waking up and it's just naturally flowing for me. It just was not happening that way. So I had to set some external markers for myself, some milestones that got me there, and then have some flexibility in my training. So I knew what I was training for. I knew what kind of training I needed to do, but I had to be flexible enough to be like, it can't be 9 a.m. or 6 a.m. on Monday morning. That was not, I tried it and I was like, oh no, like that's completely not working for me. But I knew that in this week, I have to get in 3 of these types of things in. And so that gave me the flexibility to move, but also some kind of guardrails to kind of accountability around getting it done. And then I also told people. And so when you tell people, they're like, oh, so how's that going? Like, when's your next one? I was like, oh, shoot. So now I got to like follow through. I'm going to follow through on it. So, but it was really rewarding for me to do it. I loved it. And even though in the moment of doing it, sometimes I was like, what the heck am I doing? I knew, so that's where that challenge aspect stuff that you talked about, where it was a challenge for me. Like it didn't always feel good, but I always felt good, if you know what I mean, right? Like it always felt good, and I felt great. And then when I got to my last run, I was like a minute shy of my goal, and it was amazing. Like it was great. But I realized for myself that I do need some external motivators that I can create for myself. I don't actually have to look for other people to do it for me. I could create it for myself, and that keeps me moving forward in that area. And so knowing what feeds us, knowing what fills us up is important, because just because I don't do it like somebody else doesn't mean that it's not of value. Like it's only you know what feeds you, but you got to take some time to actually sit, like just reflect on what feeds you, right? Like reflect on what do you need in this moment? And it doesn't have to be complicated. So I think that's what I value about the conversation we're talking about, is how do we just simplify it a little bit, right? Like it doesn't have to be super complicated, but be good to yourself. Like if you're a structured person, then live into your structure. Like that's amazing to be structured. If you're not a structured person and you need something a little less, you need a little bit looser to do it, then go do that. But feed yourself, right? Like feed yourself so you have what it takes for what your picture. But yeah, I think that like recognizing ourselves is important, because I don't know. I think if we miss that, then we really are always trying to feed some other version of ourselves that's never full then, right? You're always feeling empty.
That just made me think too that like self-care for me lately too has not been, because I am a doer, I'm a scheduler. If you guys need a calendar, I'll help you out. Like
Yes.
But I think like I made a joke that I'm making your resolution for 2020, and I'm tired of doing things. I'm tired of setting goals. I'm tired of like doing all these things that I feel like I have to do more. I'm like, who do I want to be? Who do I want to help? Right? Like, what do I want to practice? Like, I want to be genuine. I want to practice forgiveness. I want to create belonging. Like, for me, that is the truest form of self-care, because at my core, that's who I am. And so when you talk about filling yourself up, I actually have learned that in this next year, I am not looking to do more things or set more goals. I'm just trying to be present with who I am and who's around me, and how I can just be and acknowledge my feelings. That's really like what it comes down to.
Awesome.
Like
that is awesome.
Self-care to me in this moment.
And so what you've got me thinking about was my journey with meditation, right? And so what ultimately is meditation? It's getting us to build the muscle of looking inward first, right? It's minimizing the noise that might be going on between our ears, quieting it, so that we can build more focus. And so, and also looking inward for what we might need first, because we are resourceful and we do have resources. And so that journey, I resisted meditation. It sounded like, wow, it sounded weird to me. Oh, meditation, sit there and kind of get in Om, position. And as like, because this was back in maybe 2010, I heard this, 2010, 2011, 2012-ish, when I was back in the corporate world, and someone was doing like lunch and learn meditation things. I'm like, sounds interesting. Wasn't there yet. And then go through Georgetown and coaching, and I got connected to it. Then I started doing meditation practices. And now I'm like, cool. And it took a while to get there because of the resistance in my mind, again, back to mindset. And then, because someone can describe what it's like for you, but all they can do is describe what it's like for them. It's different for everybody. And for me, what connected me and helped me connect was a guided practice. The Oprah and Deepak, they have free guided meditations every quarter. And it's like 20 minutes. I'm like, I can do 20 minutes. I'll do 20 minutes. People doing it for an hour or a couple hours, can't do that. Let me do 20 minutes. And I built, the 20 day, they do it intentionally, 21 days, right? And then they have a bonus one. So it's 22 days and you just do it every day. So I built the practice. I'm like, wow. And it's back to what Nina was talking about. I'm thinking about who I'm being, presence, the being energy that I'm bringing. And what am I focused on? I'm focused on stuff that matters, that comes up in the sessions. I get ideas for my business, my life, my interactions with people when I meditate now, because everything's quiet and the stuff that matters starts bubbling up to the top because I've built the muscle. And so when we talk about what self-care can be, it can be different things to different people. And as I say, for me, it was meditation. Maybe it's not. Maybe for you, it's going for a walk for you. Maybe it's, you know, doing different things. As I think about my self-care and my prioritizing, getting in shape and some health and fitness goals I want to do different things each week. I want to do activity, exercise, that kind of thing, say 4 days a week. But it's not like 6 o'clock, you're talking about, Nancy, get up at 6 o'clock, run from 6 to 6:30, come back, shower. And I'm not a structure guy. I'm a framework structure with flexibility guy. So I've got to do programs that honor myself. And so that's something that we can think about too, is how well do you know yourself and what you need? And how do you craft what you need in terms of what may be your self-care goals? That could be an exercise too for people, is to kind of say, wait a minute, let me reflect. I've heard people talk about reflection. All of you ladies talk about reflection. So reflect on what I'm needing and get better connected to that. So then when we make choices, oh, I'm going to go improve my health and fitness, and these are the things I'm going to do. I've done Bikram yoga. I've done cycling, did 100-mile bike rides. I've done sports, all these different things at different points in my life. And then I stopped. Because after a while, I was like, you know, for whatever reason, I stopped. And then it's like, I like variety. I like playing, you know, growing up, I'd play soccer, I'd go to baseball, I'd go to football. I mean, I just would rotate sports in the seasons. And it was like natural. It's like, what's next? Like you're talking about, you know, what's next? It was just, what can I get to? And it's really just about knowing yourself. What do I need? Maybe it's, I just go out for a 45-minute walk. Or maybe it's, I find some people and go shoot some hoops or something. Or maybe it's just, hey, let's go have a cup of coffee and have a conversation, which could be self-care, connecting with people, because oftentimes I find myself as a solopreneur by myself. The conversation could be it. So just something to think about in terms of honoring self, identifying what your needs are, and creating what you need based on your goals and your intentions, I will say.
Yeah, what I'm hearing and what everyone is saying is definitely this element of self-awareness is extremely key. And I think nowadays, because of social media, because of every single platform that we're in, we see what people model is theirs, and we feel like it's weird if it's not like that. And I loved everything you all were saying, because I think I can kind of tell what everyone's personality is, like based off of like what their self-care routine is. And I think you all bring up a really good point about how do you know what works for you, and you only know by experimentation, and by like understanding yourself better. And so the other day, super funny, my friend was telling me, you know, Steph, I never knew that you were such a dreamer until recently. And I just realized how I would describe you is that you're a very calculated, impulsive decision maker. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense. Like, that's why I signed up for this ultra marathon. This is why I signed up for this triathlon. Oh, Nancy, you weren't at the call, but I was telling the group how I had signed up for a triathlon, with the caveat being I actually don't know how to swim. But then I signed up for it anyway, literally, because, and again, this is like related to what Brian was saying earlier about what is your goal versus what is your intention. And so it was like, I had such an uncomfortable time during that period, because I was like, well, the goal is to finish the triathlon, but then the intention behind it was to learn how to swim. And so I think I had this like weird feeling towards the end, because lo and behold, my body went into shock in like the water. It was like really cold. And then, so I actually didn't finish the swim part, even though technically I learned how to swim. I know how to swim if you like put me in water. But then I felt like, whoa, like how do I define success and failure in that? Because technically I did complete my intention, but I didn't reach my goal. And so that was such a hard thing to fathom, but then realizing like everything, it's not black and white sometimes. And it's like, there's definitely kind of like a grayish like area that I was in. And then the other thing with it is like, I put it all on social media. So it was like, people were asking me like, hey, did you run today? Did you swim? Like, were you okay? I'm just like, oh my God, why did I do this? And it all went back to the original idea, which was just to like, try something new, just to like experiment, and like to also showcase what it means to experiment, and kind of bring people into this process of me being super scared, then knowing how to swim, then still not making it, and then how does somebody process all of that happening. So it's just like so interesting to hear because again, I think like people are afraid, I think at times, to like try something new because I think it's like being afraid of failure, right? Being afraid of what's gonna happen. But I think it's also just certain things don't need a like they don't need like numbers, they don't need to be quantifiable. Some things just are literally for the sake of experimentation, for the sake of fun, for the sake of understanding yourself, and those things aren't quantifiable. So it's like there's an art, I think, to like self-care, and I think allowing for some flexibility is important, but then also just understanding your intention allows you to figure out which direction to go, right? Because if you really are working on consistency, then it really should be a streak, right? Versus if you're just trying to like for me, it was just like getting outside was important so that I wouldn't feel this like suffocating feeling that I kept feeling at home. So it just looks different. I think it's important to like put that out there, that it's not something that you just get overnight, and that the whole point is that you're processing that you're failing, like Nina had mentioned earlier. You're processing, you're failing, and then as a result of failing, you're understanding yourself better, and then going from there and being okay with that.
Right. That's
And
awesome.
that's the journey, right? It's a journey. It takes time, consistency, commitment, and it's learning, right? It's about figuring out, trying, failing, or I won't even say failing, trying, experimenting, to use your language, Stephanie, identifying what works and making more informed choices through the process of learning what works and what doesn't, and then building consistency from there. But I love your point about not necessarily needing numbers. It's needing that intention and the directional focus. I'm going to sign up for a triathlon. I don't even know how to swim yet. And I remember you telling that story. I still remember it and love that story in terms of intention. Because if she's going to do a triathlon, what does she obviously need to do, right? But she's making the intentional commitment to learn how to swim. And did she succeed? I would say she did, because she honored her intention. And guess what? It's not that she didn't complete the triathlon. It's she didn't get as far as she wanted to yet, because she's doing it again. And the next time she will. But would that be possible had she not had the courage to say, I'm signing up for this triathlon, set this date, which means I'm committed to learning how to swim. So I've got to do all the things necessary to do that. And I'm going to get where I get. That happened. I had the experience. I learned from it. Now, that's my success. And then next time, because I expect she's already signed up for the next one and is like going to crush that, right? Because she's going to kind of, and that's the thing. It's that what's next thing we were talking about. And it's the setting the challenging goals for yourself, or the challenge for yourself within self-care. It sets motivation and goals. It doesn't say you have to get up, it's not regimented. It's how you craft what that looks like. And Stephanie, I'm sure, has her routine or what she chooses to do that. And that could be based on her style. Mine would be someone that's flexible, that maybe it's within a week's time, I've got to do it. Like you were talking about, Nancy, a little more flexibility there. Others might be, because we're always on a spectrum, right? Structure, flexibility, and we're all somewhere in between. And that's why, the things we may see are all great for people, their workout programs, their diet programs, all these things. What that tells us is it worked for them, and that's great. What we have to identify is that what I need in terms of what I'm looking for with my goal, so I can make an informed choice to either say yes to that or take something from that and build my own, craft my own through an experimental process where we learn and grow and then get more clarity so we can focus. And so very much appreciating the perspective you all have brought to this conversation. As usual, we never know where it's going to go, but always richness in it in terms of the perspectives that people bring to it. As we close out our time together today, what is a parting thought or a thought you'd share with people in terms of the topic today and what you would invite them into?
I think since I've made such a major shift in my own life, things like that, right? That are just like mindless and reduce my stress, and I have to escape, and I have to step away from this terrible thing that's happening in my life, whatever it is, or it's too overwhelming. But now it's more so instead of stepping away from, I feel like I'm stepping into my own self-discovery, my own well-being, my own needs, that are valid and important. And surprise, surprise, I've always been an emotional person. Not in the sense, okay, I do cry at the end of every movie. Like, okay, Frozen 2, you guys, if you haven't seen it, it's pretty, it's not as good. But the end, when this has just come back together, I was sobbing. I called my sister. I'm like, you need to go see this movie. But again, I think like stepping into my own well-being and saying like, I'm practicing self-care not only by doing things, right, but like speaking truth to myself and psychologically, right? So psychological self-care, I guess I would call that. And like social self-care, like being around people is big for me. So not only pouring into other people, getting other people together, but asking too, you know, can I join that? You know, like I felt so many times that like with working out or exercising, I'm like, well, I'm the one who has to go. I have to go by myself. I don't like that. You know, I want to have a group there, obviously. So then just creating, right, that environment, that group, that community, that's one thing everyone has talked about. So I guess my biggest takeaway is like, if you're feeling overwhelmed or you feel like you need to reduce stress or do self-care, whatever that looks like for you, write it down, ask for help, find someone to support you in it, and do it just for the sake of your own well-being, just for the sake that, in the same way that for any of the three of you, I would say, I love you, I want the best for you, I want to help you, and I know you'd say the same for me. So
Beautiful. Thank you, Nina. Stephanie.
I love that, Nina. I think the one thing that came to mind as you were speaking, I was like, oh my God, I hope I'm not going first. Because I didn't know what to say. I was like, oh my God, Nina, coming through. No, but I think what came to mind when you're saying all that, I think in one phrase, it's like self-care is keeping a promise to yourself. It could be as simple as that, because I imagine like people who may be watching this, it's like, oh, do I have to go do the next big thing? Do I do what Stephanie did and like sign up for a triathlon? Like
sign up for triathlon.
It doesn't make any sense to like, I think people feel pressured to be like what they're seeing, and so I think it's important to just say like, it's a promise you keep to yourself. It could be something really, really, really small. It could be that you just made your bed in the morning, right? Or it could be something as big as I'm gonna run 18 miles on Sunday or something like that. That's like another like element of it, right? And I think it's like there's levels to it. There's like everyone's on a different part of the spectrum, and so it's like start where you're at. Don't start where other people are at. Just start where you are at, because that's the most important thing. It's self-care. It's about yourself. So yes.
Brilliant. Wonderful. Thank you, Stephanie. Nancy.
Yeah, it's tough to boil this down to one, considering the conversation we've had. What's really sticking out for me is be kind to yourself. Yeah, I feel like that's something that we all can do a better job of. Certainly, it speaks to myself. Like, be kind to yourself, because how we are to ourselves is how we are to other people. So as much as we are like, oh, I just want to give, chances are if you're not a person who receives well, you probably don't give well either. Analogy that was popping up in my mind throughout this call, our conversation today was, we would never, so everybody has a phone, right? And we would never think twice about charging our phone. We would never say, well, I should charge my phone. We're like, I need to charge my phone because I'm using it, right? And so the idea of charging it daily never crosses our mind twice, that we do that. And even eating, right? Like you eat every day, like but these are unconscious things that we do, and we recognize the value of it. And so I think it's in the same ways, this idea of, to be able to give, you have to have something to give. And how you charge yourself is totally up to you. And I think that's where, for me, what Steph said, like what she does versus what I do and how we do it might be the same, might be different. And that doesn't make it good or bad. It just means our ability to recognize what we need and what do you need right now. 5 years from now, 2 years from now, a month from now, it may not be the same. So that ability to stay present and recognize what's important and just take care of yourself and just be kind. Yeah, I think that's the main thing for me is know yourself and be kind to yourself, because I think that will then help us to be better human beings to other people and to kind of serve a bigger cause that we're working towards. That would be the biggest thing for me.
Awesome. How do I follow the three closings that you did in terms of, or three shares that you guys did? You ladies did, I shouldn't say that. That's something I got, one of my things to quit is the term guys, and should. What I will share, two of the things that stood out for me. Stephanie talked about trying and experimenting, and I would encourage and invite people to be champion triers in terms of build that muscle, keep trying and experimenting with new things. And I guess as a predecessor to that is ask yourself, what, kind of get clarity around what matters, what do you need, and spend time with yourself to kind of discover what that is in self-discovery. And then try different things to see what works for you, because as we kind of talked about, you are where you are. Meet yourself where you are, because we're all on a spectrum. Get ideas from other people and then figure out what works for you, and kind of try that, and then kind of you'll discover then what works for you, and then build whatever works for you from that place. And the other thing that I want to come back to, and you touched on, Nancy, was this notion of receiving that Nina brought up earlier on, giving and receiving. And that came into my orbit recently too, in terms of when we receive, it's sort of honoring the other person when we receive too, in terms of, you know, thank yous and honoring that. And someone did that to me, and it's like, it was an awareness. It's something that I sort of intuitively knew, but hey, how we receive things is sort of a caring gesture as well. And so, and we need as human beings to both have, I won't say a balance, but I'll say harmony between giving and receiving, because it's not 50-50. It's like work-life balance. No, it's work-life harmony. It's whatever that is, wherever you are on the spectrum, because each of our needs are different. And so that element of receiving and being a receiver, and then making the request to ask for what you need, is a muscle and that you want to continue to build. It's an act of honoring self, that when you do that, you're able to better achieve the harmony that you need to go out and serve yourself and others. And so with that, I'll thank you all for your contributions and being here. Amazing conversation. And so what I invite everyone to do is to share your insights and your perspectives and your experiences with self-care, maybe even your definitions of it, maybe even your definition around selfish. We've kind of talked and maybe redefined selfish as not such a bad thing, that we may be conditioned to believe it's bad to be selfish. Maybe it's not always. What are your thoughts around things you will try and experiment with to get better, right? This is the We Can Do Better conversation. This is about creating better for you. It's not a comparison game. It's a growth game that is very personal. So what does that look like for you? Who else would enjoy this conversation? Invite them in to contribute in the comments below. And we look forward to having you on future conversations where we discuss different topics to expand how we might do better for one another and with one another. Thank you all for being here today.
Thanks, Brian.